Hello everybody, Network Wizkid here, and in today's video we're going to take a look at how to configure Cisco Firepower Active Standby Failover. This video is part of my CCNP CCIE security studies, and we're focusing on the firepower topics, in particular the blueprint securing networks with Cisco Firepower version 1.0. The section we're looking at today is 1.3 of the blueprint, and in particular 1.3.b, which is active standby failover. So they always do, I like to cover some main points based on my studies and what I've picked up in regards to this topic. So we'll just go through these first, and then we'll take a look at the topology that we'll be working with today for the demonstration, and then jump into the lab environment. So active standby failover provides high availability for FTD devices. So that means if one device happens to go offline for whatever reason, whether that breaks or is deliberately taken offline, powered off, then effectively the second device should be able to take over, or the standby device should be able to take over. FTD devices must be identical. There's a few things we need to look at here, and we'll focus on them on the next slide. The standby unit does not pass traffic, but it synchronizes configuration and state information from the active device. Again, we'll cover this on the next slide. Can have a dedicated failover and state interfaces. Can also have one interface for both failover and state information. So what that means is we can choose to have a separate failover interface and a separate state interface, or we can bundle those two into one and just have one interface that covers or transfers the information required for failover and state information. Interfaces can be configured with cannot be configured with names. So those interfaces that are maybe configured with names in your environment, the names will have to be removed before you can use them for high availability, so before you can use them for failover and state links. Physical redundant and ether channel interfaces can be used as failover and state links, but not sub interfaces. So if you've got any sub interfaces and you're looking to use these as interfaces for the failover and the state link, you won't be able to do that. And the recommendation is that the state link has the same bandwidth requirement as the data interfaces, and this is so that if, for instance, the active FTD device happens to fail, which is carrying or passing all the traffic, that information needs to be sent over and synchronized to the secondary device in order for that device to take over. So it's recommended that you have the same amount of bandwidth as the data interfaces to accommodate this. Going on to the requirements and the information that's exchanged between the active and standby units. When we look at the requirements that both devices have to have in order to configure active standby failover, there are a few things that we need to take into consideration, which I've listed here. So we'll just quickly run through these. So the FTD must have the same deployment mode. So whether it's deployed in router or rooted or transparent mode, both devices need to be the same. So you can't have one device in rooted mode and the other in transparent mode. They both need to operate in the same deployment mode. Both FTDs must be running the same software version. FTDs must be in the same domains on the FMC. So we can assign FTDs to different domains, as we call them, on the FMC. However, if you are looking to form an high availability pair between two devices, they do need to be operating in the same domain. NTP must be synchronized and FTDs must have the same time. DHCP or PPOE must not be configured on any interface. So they can't be, if you've got any of those configured, you won't be able to configure active standby failover. FTD shouldn't have uncommitted changes. So what that means is if there's any pending deployments to either of the FTDs, make sure that those configuration changes are pushed to both devices and nothing is outstanding to be pushed to both devices before forming or configuring an active standby failover. And last but not least, FTDs must have the same licenses. Now when it comes to information being exchanged between the active and standby units, there's a couple of things that are exchanged. So we've got the firewall state itself, so whether one device is active or standby. We've got the keeper lives, which are essentially the yellow messages between both devices to kind of work out if they're both online and reachable. We have the network link status. We have the MAC addresses which are exchanged, and we also have the configuration, replication and synchronization. So to configure active standby failover on FTDs, I've got a few steps here that we need to follow in order to get that done. So the first one I've put down is ensure that the prerequisites are met as per the previous slide. If you don't, then you'll struggle to get any sort of active standby failover established. The second is to add both FTDs to the FMC. So once you've added them to the FMC, then you can proceed with the next step, which is configuring the high availability. When configuring the high availability, you need to select the HA link and state link interfaces. If you're using the same interface for HA and state, then you have the option to specify that when configuring. Specify IP addresses for those interfaces. So those those interfaces will need IP addresses in order to communicate. And then there's an optional step to enable IPsec encryption, so essentially encrypting those flows between both devices. Once you've done that, you then can configure the data interfaces, so whether that be you've got an inside and an outside interface, you can configure those, and then you can go on to configure secondary IP addresses. Another optional step, you can configure virtual MAC addresses, and the last step is to verify the HA status on the FMC and CLI. So in the demonstration, we'll try to cover all these topics or all these steps that I've listed here. This is the demonstration that we're going to be working with today. So what we have on screen is we've got a pair of FTD devices, so FTD001, FTD002. We've got two separate links between both of those devices connected directly, and what they're going to act as is failover, HA link and state link. And then we've got a simple setup whereby we've got VPC 8 down at the bottom, and this is going to act as the inside host, and then we've got a separate router R6 connected to a separate client VPC 9. And what we aim to do is to try test the connectivity from VPC 8 to VPC 9, and once we've configured the failover and initiate some testing, we can see what the traffic flow looks like and whether any traffic is dropped as the secondary device becomes the active device. So we'll just jump in now to the lab environment. So on the FMC here, under devices, device management, I have both of the FTD devices. So I've got Eve FTD 001 and 002 here. So both devices have already been added to the FMC, and what we're going to do now is we're going to start by adding those two, or creating an HA pair between both of those. Essentially what we want to do is want to add or make 001 the active and 002 will be the standby device. So to do this, we just need to go across to add and then availability, and we can give our HA pair name, so we'll just call it Eve and G HA pair, and our device type is going to be FTD or firepower threat defense. Our primary device is going to be 001 as I mentioned, and our secondary is going to be 002. So we'll proceed by pressing continue. We get a little warning message to say that configuring or proceeding will restart the snort processes of the primary and secondary devices and could cause traffic interruption. So if you're doing this in a live environment or customer environment, you do need to probably make sure that you're under a change window, just so that you've got all areas covered. So we'll proceed with this. We'll press yes. And now we've got two different sections. So we've got the high availability link section and we've got the state link section here. So we'll start with the high availability link, and we want to select the interface. So we had, if we flick back to the topology real quick, we had gig 02 and gig 03 as the links that are going to be used for HA and state. So we'll use gig 02 as the HA link. So gig 02, and we'll select gig 03. And if you're using one interface, as I said here, you've got an option to specify the same interface, but in our case we're not, so we'll use gig 03 for that. We'll give it a name, so we'll call this one HA link. IP address, so let's give it an IP address of 1.1.1. In fact, we won't do that because I think that's used elsewhere. Let's do 9.9.9 and 9.1. Let's do 9.9.2. We'll give it a mask of 252, and we'll call this one state link, and this will be 9.9.5, 9.9.6, and again we'll give it a /30 subnet. And if you recall from the presentation, we do have the option to encrypt traffic between these interfaces, so we'll go ahead and we'll press that, and we can choose to generate those keys automatically, or we can add our own shared secret or shared key here. For this demonstration we'll just do auto, and then we'll click add, and then this should start to add both of those devices into an high availability pair. So we can see now that the HA pair has been added. We can configure monitoring of interfaces and health policies, etc. So what's going to happen now is, if we have a look here, we can see now that the name that we gave it, Eve NG HA pair, is created kind of a separate group for our devices, and we can see that our primary device is here, secondary device is here, and the communication should occur between them two devices. So HA is currently being configured, so if we look up here we can see that the FMC is pushing the necessary configuration to these devices, so we can see here. So we'll just wait for that to complete before we proceed. So the HA now has been completed, as we can see in our tasks. So what we'll do now is we'll just click on the actual HA pair itself, and then we can go across to summary, and we can see now that we have both devices configured, and we've got the primary peer, which is active as FTD 001, and then we've got the secondary peer, which is standby FTD 002. So that's exactly how we wanted it. So what we do now is we configure interfaces as a whole, now that these devices are added to an HA pair. So if we just expand on these sections a little bit and refresh them. Okay, so heading back to our topology, we can see that we have gig 01, which is configured as what we're going to call the outside, so we'll configure that as the outside, and we've got gig 00, which is configured as the inside. So we'll start with gig 00, and we can call, first of all we'll enable that, we'll give it a name and we'll call that inside. Leave all that as standard. We'll give it an IP address of 192.168.30.1/24. And if you notice here, we haven't got the option to configure the secondary IP address, so we'll do that after we've configured the interfaces themselves. So we'll proceed with save for that one, and now we'll configure the outside. Let me just expand on that a little bit so you can see this as well. There we go. So we'll configure gig 01, and we'll enable that, and we'll give that the name of outside for the purpose of this lab. And the IP address we'll use for that is, let me just see if I specified one. Just bear with me. So we'll use 40.0/29. Okay. So we'll use 192.168.40.1/29. And that's enabled, so we'll OK with that one. And then once we're done with that, we'll press save. And just note, actually, now that we've got the HA configured, you can see that we've got gig 0, 2 and 3 that are the link lights are green, so they're active, as you can see. So if you hover over them, you can see the information on those, the IP addresses, etc. But you don't have the option here to edit it. So if you click on that little magnifying glass, you can see that everything is blacked out, and you can see what it's being used for. Okay, so now that we've done that, if we head over to, we won't press deploy yet, we'll head over to the high availability tab, and what we can do here is we can add virtual MAC addresses, we can add the standby addresses, etc. We can see all the high availability and state link information, as you can see on screen. So what we'll do is we'll add our standby addresses. So let's say 192.168 40.2, and we can choose to monitor the interface for failures. So this means if this interface dies, essentially a failover will occur. So we'll leave that on. We've given it a secondary IP address, and we'll do the same with the inside now. 192.168.30.2, and we'll keep monitoring on that interface as well. Okay, and then we'll save that. Now, although we're not going to do this in the demonstration, if you want to configure virtual MAC addresses, then the option to do so is here. All you have to do is interface MAC address, click the little plus icon, select the interface. So you see we've got the inside and the outside interface, and you can select enter the MAC address that you wish to use in the format that's listed there. So what we'll do as well is we will just add a route. So we'll add over to routing. So we'll add a route for the let's just show you on the topology. So we'll add a route for this section here to route anything that's destined for 20.0 to the next stop IP address. Let me just check router 6. In fact, 20.1. So we need to change that outside interface IP address because we're using that. So we'll do 40.3. It's a slash 248. Yes, it is slash 29. Okay, that looks better. Let's save that a moment. And let's go back to our let's just go back now to our routing, and we'll just add a static route. All these sections need pulling out, but what I'll do now is I'll just add outside interface, and it's 20.0. And the gateway is gonna be let's add a new gateway. 192.168 40.3. We'll just copy that into the host as well. That's gonna be the next stop gateway, and we'll OK that. So we save that, and that's in there. Once all these sections are pulled out a little bit, that's one annoying thing. So we can see that in there. So we'll proceed with saving with that. And last of all, just before we deploy, we need to ensure that traffic flow would be permitted between the inside and outside. So what we'll do is we'll just enable a permit any. So you can see that it's currently disabled, logins on, but what we'll do is we'll enable this rule, and it's purely an any. We just want to catch the traffic and test the HA. We'll save that, and I think we are done. So let's go ahead and deploy that. And when we go to deploy now, we can see that we haven't got two separate devices. We've got the actual HA pair here. So we'll deploy that to the HA pair. And we'll just wait until that deployment finishes. So that policy now should have been deployed successfully, as we can see. So what we'll do now is we'll just verify some configurations, and we'll see if we can establish connectivity between both devices. So we'll just go to the analysis, connections and events on the FMC, so we can see those connection events once they start to come in, and we'll just verify some routes. So I'll do IP route. So this is on router 6, so we want to verify that we have a static route going to 30.0, which is essentially on the inside of the FTDs, and that's going via 40.1, which is the active FTD. So if I just try and ping that interface, okay. So I've got those up. 40.1 is returning incomplete. I will configure the inside VPC 8 and VPC 9 now, just make sure they're up as well, and then we'll test connectivity from both ends of those. So we're going to configure VPC 8 and VPC 9. Just transition back now, so we'll configure VPC8 first. We'll give it an IP address of 192.168.30.10, and it's a /24, and we'll give it a gateway of 30.1. And then what we'll do is we'll try and ping that gateway, which is the firewall 30.1, so we can see there that we can get to the inside interface of that firewall, so that's good. And then what we'll do now is we'll add the IP address for VPC 9, 192.168.20.10. Again, it's a /24, and the gateway should be 20.1. Again, we'll try and ping that gateway, just make sure we've got connectivity, and we have. So that's going up to router 6, which is good. So now we know we've got connectivity from VPC 9 to router 6 and VPC 8 to the FTDs. So if we try and ping across now to VPC 9 from VPC 8, let's see what we get. 192.168 20.10. Yeah, that's right, and we can see that we get a timeout there, so it's not successful. So it's either the routing or well, it can't be the firewall because we have the relevant rule in place. 1, 2, so 00 should actually be, that's not a switch interface, so it should be a switch interface, so we'll either have to change that. So if I go into, it's not going to let me change it to a switch port, so what I'll do is I'll power that down, change it to a switch port, and then power it back up, and then we might have resolved the issue. So I've changed those interfaces and powered them back up, so let's attempt to get to the firewall now from router 6. Let's do a show app. And we can see that we've got a duplex mismatch with, so Ethernet 00 is not full duplex, so we'll just do duplex full. That should fix that. Let's just try now and ping 192.168.40.1. And now you can see that we can actually ping the FTD's interface. So the issue there was I wasn't using a switch interface there on the virtual environment. So I'll just save that for now. And what we'll do now is we'll try ping from VPC8 to VPC9 again. And we can see now that that is successful. So we've got successful responses there. We can verify that in the connection events, so analysis, connection and events. Because we've got login enabled on the permit any rule, this should be displayed here, so we can see there it is indeed displayed. So what we'll do now is we'll set up a continuous ping from VPC8. If I can remember which it was. Yeah, so we set up a continuous ping now, and what we'll do is to finish this lab demonstration on the FTD HA failover configuration. What we'll do is we'll actually shut down one of these interfaces. So if we head over to our topology and we shut down, let's have a look what we can shut down. So if we shut down, we can either do a soft failover or we can do a hard failover, by the way. So a soft failover is where you initiate the failover yourself via the CLI or via the FMC. We'll do the hard failover and see what we get there. In fact, let's do both. So to show you the soft failover, we go to devices, device management. And then we click on the or find the HA pair itself, and what you can do is you can either, we don't want to break the HA because that will essentially put both devices back to operating separately, but the interesting one that we want is the two arrows left and right, and that is to switch the active peer. So we're essentially switching the active from being 001 to becoming 002. So we'll just do that, and as you see there, we'll be prompted asking us if we really want to make the 002 the active peer. So let's go ahead and press yes. We can see that it's switching peers. Let's have a look if we get, so we've got one timeout and that's it, so it's come back now. So we could see that there's hardly any interruption, if any, in the network at all there. And when it reloads, we can see now that the 001 device is acting as the, although it's now the primary still, it's now acting as a standby, and then we've got the secondary, which is acting as the now active device as well. So let's just keep that pinging a moment, and we just do a show app, so we can see 40.1, which is the ARP entry for the FTD. We can see that there. So if we try and ping that again, we can see that it's still successful, and we can see that the ARP there is still the same, so the MAC address, etc., is still the same. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll switch back the the peer, so we'll make the ftd001 active again. Again, we should only get one packet that's lost, if any. And in fact, I don't think we got any then. So we can see there it's reloading, but we can see already that the 001 is the active device again, and 002 is a standby device, and we didn't get any packet loss there, so that's good. Okay, so if we just bring up the CLI, just do a show failover. We can see that this unit that we're on is the primary unit, and we can see that this host is active. We can also see that the other host is standby. We can also see things like how long the devices have been active, both for primary and secondary. And we can see which interfaces are monitored and which are not. So because I'm in a virtual environment, and removing the interface on EVE-NG doesn't seem to have worked, what I will do is I will shut down the primary FTD via the CLI, and then we should hopefully be able to observe a failover where the device itself has gone offline. So you can see there we're getting some timeouts, but now we're back in action, so that failover seems to have occurred now. So we had a few, we had a bit of traffic interruption there. So let's have a look how many packets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 packets, and then we were back in action, and that's while the failover occurred. So now that that's loaded, you can see that the primary peer is classed as disabled, and that's because we've shut down that device. And we can see now that the secondary peer is now acting as the active device, and we can still pass traffic. And you observed, as well as I did, that we only had a few timeouts while that failover occurred. So if we check now on the active device, on the failover, on the CLI, we should see similar to what we see on the actual FMC. So we can see that this host is a secondary, however it's now acting as the active device, and we can see that the other host, which is a primary device, has failed. There's no communication between that device, so everything else is down. So we do a show failover history. We can see also that we have where is it, around here, the failover occurred. So we can see that there were no hellos heard from its mate, which was the active. So that's gone to active. You get the apply of the configuration, and then it becomes the active device. Also, just flicking over to the actual connection events, we can see now that the secondary is acting as the active device. We can see that the device is passing through here on the right hand side is now FTD002, whereas before it was passing through FTD001. So now what we'll do is we'll just power, just before we finish off this video, we'll power on the original primary active device, and we'll see what state it assumes once it comes back online. So with the device coming back online now, let's see if we've got a change in the status. So if we just do a show failover again, we can see that the other host, which is the one that we just powered on, which is the primary, we can see that there's a synchronization occurring now between this now secondary active device and the primary secondary device now, as that's coming back online. And what that's doing is it's syncing all the configuration elements with that device, ready so that if this now secondary active device fails, then we can have a successful failover to the other device. And at the same time, nothing changes in the network, so traffic continues to flow without any issues in traffic passing. The last ones there were when we did the powered off the device. And then if we have a look on the actual FMC itself, on the summary tab, so we can see the same information here that we just saw on the CLI. So we can see that the synchronization is happening with the original primary peer, and we can see that the secondary still remains that active device and passing traffic. So now if we take a look at the synchronization status, now that it's done, we should be able to see some different results. So we can see that the secondary device that we're on here now is still the active device. We can see that the synchronization with the other host is now done. It still remains a primary because that's what we configured it as. However, it does come back as a standby device. It doesn't fail over automatically. So what we and that's just so that we're not interrupting that traffic flow once that device comes back online. So you can also see that with show failover state. So we can see that the synchronization is done, and we can see that the host is standby ready, the other host is standby ready, and the current host that we're on is now is still the active device. Looking at that on the FMC, we'll see that FTD001 has changed from synchronizing state to standby. And again, as I say, it's the same information. The secondary peer still remains the active device. So we've still got that ping there. What we're going to do to finish up this video is we'll transition the original primary back to its active state and return the secondary back to its standby state once this is done. So there you go. So we can see that FTD001 is the standby device now. So we'll just go back to device management, or you can also do it via the CLI, but for the purpose of this video we'll keep it here, and what we'll do is we'll use the same button to switch the active peers, and we'll see if we get any traffic drops. And again, it doesn't look like we've got any traffic drops there with a soft failover there. Again, we'll just click back onto this HA pair, and we'll now verify the status as well. And we can also do that on this secondary device again. We do a show failover state. We can see that this host now, whereas before it was the secondary active, now it's secondary standby ready, and the other host is now primary active. And also looking on the FMC, we should be able to verify the same information there as well. And there we go. So we can see that FTD001 is now active and 2 is standby. So that's it for today's demonstration. I did take you through some more detailed topics in the active standby failover scenario, but I hope you found that useful, and I hope that all made sense. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments section below, or reach out to me on any of my social media platforms or my website, networkwizkid.com. The links that are shown on your screen will also be included in the video description as well. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you like these videos and want to stay up to date with the latest videos that I do publish, you can go ahead and hit that notifications button, so that every time I publish a video you will receive an email notification, so that you don't miss out on the latest videos that I publish. But until next time, thank you for watching. Goodbye.